Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, I can hear you. Okay. All right, well, ready to go. So, welcome everybody to the Jewelry Makers Guild podcast with Dellana. We're going to dive into the creative forces behind our fellow jewelers. I'm Tonya Davidson, the creator of the Jewelry Makers podcast and a fellow maker of 24 years. It's my quest to try as many different techniques, materials, and consume as much information as I can to share with my fellow maker and other artists. So I thought it would be fun to find out what inspires our fellow artists and makes their work so dang good. So I went on the hunt for the people that I really would like to pick their brains and find out what makes them such amazing artists and why they chose to do the things that they do with their work. And I came up with a list of people and asked them, and they said yes. And I'm just so excited to welcome today my podcast guest, Dellana. For those of you who don't know Dellana, let me introduce her. She's an artist, knife maker, and goldsmith. She got her start when she studied jewelry making with the noted studio jeweler Earl Pardon at Skidmore College. After leaving Skidmore College, she started her own jewelry business, creating art jewelry for private clients and galleries such as Aaron Faber in New York City, New York. Dellana did this successfully for 17 years before her interest in Damascus pattern welded steel and knives led her to becoming a full-time knife maker in 1995. Dellana specializes in lockback folding knives. She is known for her unique designs and use of precious metal and gemstones in her fully functional knives. She forges her own Damascus steel and her knives, as well as doing all the other work involved. You'll see the stone setting, the interesting materials she uses. It's really quite incredible. Among the many honors she has received, her highest was in 1999 when she was voted into the prestigious and exclusive Art Knife Invitational as a full voting member. Dellana has won numerous awards in both the jewelry and knife world, and her work has been featured in many national and international publications over the years. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen below, you'll find Dellana's website and her social media pages. I sure hope you will check those out, like her, follow her, and also post some comments on her pages. After the podcast is over, I will post in the comments her other contact information in case you'd like to purchase one of these wonderful knives or another piece of her work. So thank you for joining me today, Dellana. And let's get started with the questions. So first, for almost all of us, there was a spark that led us down the path of creating. So I'm curious, who or what was that early spark, or what got you in? What was your earliest memory of making jewelry?
Well, I made stuff as a child. I just made things. I never made jewelry until actually at Skidmore College. I never took medals or anything before that. My mother's an artist. She's a successful graphic artist. She had her own business, and she's an entrepreneur, and she's very creative. And she encouraged my sister and I as children to do pottery, do sewing, do macrame, whatever we wanted to do, painting, drawing, all that stuff. So I was brought up with that and encouraged along that way. I actually have a degree in animal science, which has nothing to do with jewelry making or metals. And after I did that for a little while and decided that really, I love the animals, but I didn't like working for the people I was involved with, and decided to take some metals classes in a summer course at Skidmore College, and I just absolutely loved it. As soon as I touched that metal, I was like, ooh, this is just exactly what I want to do. And I was very fortunate to have Earl Pardon as my professor, and that's when I started making jewelry. So it was really no experience before that.
So do you think that graphic design is in your blood, as putting things together and designing that? And it seems like your mother would have been quite a pioneer to have been in that field that early.
She absolutely was. She is an amazing woman. She's 90 years old and still as sharp as ever, and still publishing books and doing all sorts of photography and things like that. She started her own business in a time when women weren't doing that. You know, she couldn't get a bank loan herself and all of that kind of thing. But she persevered, and she did it with grace and style. She's amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah. Well, it makes you know that you can do it. Whatever you set your mind to, you can do it. When you have role models like that, both with your professor who inspired you and your mother who just cleared that path and showed you how to take that path. So that's really, every person I talk to seems to have that story, which is why I always ask it, because there is something that drives us, that taught us that we can be what we want to be, or find that dream and follow it. And I love that those stories. Those are great.
Yeah.
So as we talk, I'm going to be showing slides of your work. So if you want to comment about any of them while we're talking, feel free to jump in if there's something special that we should know about those pieces as well. So let's see. I think I skipped something. There we go. Okay. So I always think, my second question is, I always think about a person's work as their life. Their quilt. So it could be like the perfect stew, or it could be a quilt, and each square sort of represents a technique that you've tried, or a person that you've met, or someone you've studied under or been influenced by, and each person sort of becomes one of those quilt squares on your quilt. And even though you look at the quilt and you're like, well, those squares don't go together because they're so diverse and possibly not similar, those voices have such a huge impact on our work and who we are. So my question to you is, who or what would comprise those quilt squares for you?
Well, certainly Earl Pardon was the first influence in jewelry that I learned so much from. I loved his jewelry, and if people aren't familiar with who he was and the kind of work he did, do a Google search, because he was very contemporary jeweler. In the 50s, he started with enamels, and he taught me a lot of fabrication techniques, but the biggest thing that he taught me was how to pull the designs out and put them together. And that's something that I think is really important. And he encouraged me. I was one of the most enthusiastic members of the class, and he liked that, because a lot of the people there, it was just an elective that they had to take. It was a liberal arts college, and there was just an elective they had to take. But I loved it, and I wanted all the attention that he would give me and push me further and have me do more. And he did. He was really great about that. So he really helped me learn to get what I was capable of out and onto paper and then into the metal. And I am very, very grateful for that. And then my knife making mentor, Jim Schmidt, was just a wonderful human being, an extremely skilled knife maker, one of the first ones to start the American Bladesmith Society back in the 70s. And I didn't know it when I met him, but he was one of the top 5 knife makers in the world. And very down to earth, completely genuine, big man, looked like Burl Ives, and very quiet, didn't say a whole lot, but he also liked my enthusiasm. And by the time I had met him, I had been doing jewelry for probably 15 years at that point, and I was able to finish things, and I had enough metals vocabulary that I was able to learn it quickly, and he didn't have to spend time showing me how to polish something or sand something or like that. And I also had a design vocabulary of my own, which was very different in the knife world, and he just got a kick out of the fact that here's a girl that can come in, wants to learn to forge Damascus, and she's good at making stuff and all of that. And he turned into he and his wife both very dear friends, and he was kind of like a second dad to me. wonderful experience.
It's quite incredible that, and must be intimidating to walk into a world of mostly men that make knives, and
Very male dominated.
yeah, and to know whether or not the person that is going to teach you is going to think, oh, well, she's doing this as a hobby, or taking you seriously, and then actually investing in you back so that you feel like it's a two-way street of, you're giving him everything you've got as a student and being very teachable, and he's really taking you seriously as a woman. And even to this day, I think sometimes I meet, engravers, and I want to learn from them, and I'm wondering, what are they thinking of me wanting to learn, and my age, a woman, and whether they would take me seriously. So I think that's quite incredible.
Yeah. Well, I didn't worry about the fact that I was female. I never have. It's just like, accept me as a person and accept my abilities as a person. I don't care that I'm female, and I don't want them to care that I'm female. And I had enough experience in other male-dominated areas that I knew how to handle it.
Yeah.
Was to just be normal with them and don't expect them to treat me a different way. Don't demand anything from them. Just my philosophy is show them, don't tell them.
Yes.
And show them with my work. That's what I've done.
And you had those skills coming in too, like you said. He didn't have to teach you polishing, and so you were ready. You were ready to step into that role and learn as that student, which is really valuable.
I moved forward very quickly because of the experience that I had in jewelry and also in my own business and things like that. So I didn't feel intimidated. It was very exciting to just step into this new world. That was I got to make exactly what I wanted to make, and people loved it and accepted it. There was of course some that weren't that thrilled with me, but that's going to be the case in all of life. Nobody, if you get 50% of the people liking you, you're doing great.
Yeah. And I think that confidence that you have comes across too. You felt prepared, you felt ready, you were confident in yourself, and so I'm sure that came across too. And I think that's something that we always have to remember, that we need to, even if we don't feel it, we have to pretend. Walk that what is that called, where you wear it until it becomes true. There's that saying, but I can't think of what it is right now. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I'm naturally a very shy person, and so for me, I've always had to kind of present a different way than I'm feeling inside.
Yeah.
So you just have to do it.
Yeah. We were talking, but everyone who's watching right now, we were talking earlier about how I was scared to do the podcast for 4 or 5 years. I've been thinking about doing it, and I even bought into a program to learn about podcasting, and I just never could make myself do it because I was so afraid to get in front of the camera and not being perfect. And then I realized and my son was like, kept pushing me, just do it, Mom, just do it. And because I wanted to. I really want to talk to other artists, and especially now that we're always so separated, by distance or by COVID or whatever it is, that it's important to get out and talk to your fellow makers and not be isolated. And that's, I think, why a lot of us are so addicted to social media, because it is our way of connecting. So yeah, you just have to sometimes jump in, and if you fail, so what? If I miss a word or I say it wrong, it's okay. It's more real this way. But yeah. And also, my next question for you is that I think that the best art is made by people who have something to communicate. They have a desire to tell a story or to leave a mark on the world. So what drives your work?
Mine is, my motivation is very basic. I like to make beauty. I like to make beauty and put that out in the world. And that's really where I'm coming from. I don't get really deep with it. It's just, that's what I like.
So is it more for you about the design and how the components come together? I know your materials that you're using are so complementary but diverse, and also very different, like this piece that I'm showing right now, that it really, there's just so much to look at. And you imagine what the textures would be like to touch the different, like I see the different ways that you finish the metal. Some are textured, some are polished, and then of course different materials with the steel. That it's just very interesting when you sit down to decide on a design. Are you just going with the flow, or do you have sort of a bunch of materials laid out that are speaking to you?
No, I will get an idea, or I'll sketch. I have notebooks with sketches in them, and I'll like this shape. I'll think about that and push it a little bit and do it all in pencil first, pencil and paper. That's how I do it. And then my brain just starts thinking, oh, I've got this and that and the other, and these would work together. And how am I going to go about doing that? And like this knife here that you have on the screen that's green, yellow, and pink 14 karat gold with diamonds and rubies and emeralds, and sapphires and opals.
Wow.
And this was actually commissioned, and a couple came to me and they wanted something to commemorate their 10-year anniversary. And so there's all sorts of symbolism going on in here that is applicable to them. And I mean, there's 10 diamonds on each side. That was for their 10-year anniversary. We have a compass type shape in the cross on the bolster. That front piece of metal there is called the bolster. The rubies are for the heart, and red and love and all of that. And you know, as I heard, the emeralds for the heart chakra. And the file work that I did on the spine of the knife, the top back part that you put there, I call that hugs and kisses. It's X's and O's. And so I don't have to explain this all to everybody, because it comes across, I think, in the feeling of the knife when you look at it. If I explain it to you, then you go, oh yeah, I see that. And if you look at the very tail end of the knife, there's a heart.
Very nice.
And those are just little things that I'll do because I want people to be able to look at it and be interested in what I made, front, back, inside, outside. There's file work on the inside of that knife too. Nobody's going to see that normally, but it's there. And if somebody does look inside, they get to see that. It's a nice little surprise. It's just a happy little thing to find.
Well, that's what makes good work, is all the marks that are on purpose that communicate something, but you really don't know. I mean, it works, and you get the message and you understand what the message is, but it wasn't written out for you. Right.
And it all works together.
Yes.
So no one thing that's jumping out and shouting and saying, here I am. It
now,
flows.
As an artist, I always want to look at the piece, and I want to have the explanation, because to me, that's interesting as a maker, to see what went into it. And maybe not for the viewer and the ultimate wearer or the person that has it on their wall, but as a maker, it's really cool to get behind the scenes and understand why that was done that way. So thank you for that explanation.
Well, I like when I would do knife shows and people would come to my table, I always wanted people to pick up my work, and they were almost always all sold ahead of time. The collector was going to have them on the table, but I want people to pick them up. I want them to feel, I want them to see it, look at it all over, and then I want them to open and close it so they can feel how it works. Also, I want them to have that tactile interaction with it, and if there's a story that goes with it, I tell them that too. And I love the look on their face when they get it, and they can see everything that's there. They knew they liked it before I told them what was involved, but then they understand and they get excited about it.
Yeah. We talked about when I talked to Julie about how if you can get them in their heart instead of in their head, then you make a sale, because then they probably, even though it's not going to be their knife, it's someone else's knife, now they're thinking about what they would want on their own knife and what story they would tell with you making that knife for them. That's very cool. Okay, so my next question is, a lot of artists get attached to their work and they don't want to sell it or give it away. And then there's the other makers who, for them, it's about the journey of the making of the piece, working through it, working with materials, communicating that story. So for you, what's more important, and what's the drive for you with your pieces?
I don't own a knife of my own. I just have never gotten around to making one for myself. I never feel bad when they go. I'm happy that they're gone. They're not mine. They're just passing through me to get out there. And I love the process. I absolutely love the process. I do own my own jewelry, but that's not because I didn't want to get rid of it, but because I made it for myself, kind of thing. And I think that there's an intent. Most of my work is, it's already spoken for when I make it. So I know the person, or I know a little bit about them. Some people I know more than others. There's a feeling that I'm putting into my work that doesn't belong to me. It belongs out there. Mm-hmm. So it's never an issue for me to say, oh, I wish I didn't have to sell that.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
And I like the exchange of the dollars, which is actually, of course, just energy. I like the energy coming back to me from putting in all that long, hard work on what I do.
Yes. Yes. So do you do like an intake interview when they commission you, and you have like a set of questions that you might ask them about, or?
No.
Okay.
Usually most people see something of mine that I've made before, and they would like something in that series. I don't duplicate anything exactly the same. Every one of them is a little bit different, and I work in series, and some of the series are very different than others. And if they know what they want, I will give them the options in terms of types of materials, things like that. But they are coming to me because they know about me, usually in the knife world. They want something different, and they want something of mine, and most of them just want me to make whatever I want to make.
Nice.
And I do have several people that I can go to and say, oh, I have this idea, I'd really like to do this new thing, and how do you feel about this? Would you be interested in this? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say, oh, I'd rather have something like this. And that's fine too. Mm-hmm. I don't do their designs. I don't give them too much input into it. That I just found over the years that is just an exercise in less than fun.
Yeah. I had asked you earlier, and off the podcast live portion, about if you sold your work, or if you had commissions. What do you make stuff and then try to sell it, or if you mostly do commissions? And it was really interesting to me and quite wonderful that you said that you have a wait list. So people find you, and then they want you to do one, you put them on a wait list, and then they just have to wait until you get to them.
Right.
That's so great. God, that's every artist's dream.
And I'm very, very fortunate to know that. I'm very grateful for that. And it's the knife world is a very different world than the jewelry world. I was very fortunate to get into it when I did, and to be as accepted as I have been, and have my work liked.
Is it as competitive, or the jewelry world is very saturated, but is the knife world as saturated?
It's in a way, yes, in the lower end, and the more hobby oriented, mm-hmm. and the things like that. Yeah, it's very saturated now, particularly with the popularity of the reality show Forged in Fire. Mm-hmm. And knows that, that is a reality show, and it's a fun show to watch, but it is not
quite like that.
But it's it's a different world now than when I first got in. It's particularly now. I mean, the last year has changed everything immensely. So there's not as many shows, and shows where you would find the collectors where they would see you, and the ability to pick up somebody's work and see it and see how well it is, because photographers can make a lot of stuff look really good in photographs that isn't in the hand. And I think it's important that people be able to touch and really inspect and see the quality of something, and don't have that availability when you don't get to go and do the shows anymore. It's a different world. I came in with a very different perspective and a different design model and design vocabulary than other knife makers. So I was very unique, and the collectors that collect art knives really just welcomed me and were very, very supportive of me, because I was doing something that I wasn't a clone of anybody else. I have made a very pointed effort in all my metals career not to look like my mentor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just really don't like seeing people's work that looks, you can say, oh, so and so taught you. It's just not the best approach as far as I'm concerned, because I think you get too on a road path design wise that is limiting you, because you're just riffing off of somebody else's
right
ideas, basically. And I didn't do that. And I, just because I want to do my own thing and I want to push myself enough to design something different. This knife here that you have on the screen is the only one that I've ever done of this sort. This is called a Goblin Folder, and at the end, on the tail end of it, and that's carved in the back end of it. That's a folding knife also. But my mentor was known for these. He pioneered these. He was an incredible artist with these. And the only reason I did this was that after he died, he had one that he had planned on doing for a very good collector who was also a friend of mine. And the collector came to me after his death and asked me if I would make the knife for him. Because he thought that, first of all, Jim would like it if I did it, and that he wanted it done to a standard that he thought Jim would have done. So this is very unlike most of my work, because it's not really just coming strictly out of my head.
That's quite a compliment.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. So, yeah.
And it's you can tell, because when I saw this piece, I was like, well, this is very unlike your other pieces. So it's very clear what is your voice. And then this piece, which is really quite beautiful. I love it. But it is true when you do take classes, or you learn from other people, or you're inspired by other people, that you need to have your own voice, because you have your own message and it's your own work, and it's not fair to yourself to make copies of your mentors or whoever you're inspired by.
Yeah, it really isn't, and it limits you.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're always going to question yourself, or you should maybe. If you don't, but whether it's your work or your derivative of someone else's work.
Exactly.
Okay, my next question is, your knives are so beautiful, but they're obviously so time consuming. And I had asked you earlier about the hours that you kind of put into these knives and these pieces on average, and each one is going to be totally different. Like the one you just did with the granulation was like, that's a lot of hours. But can you explain to us, because I know most of the people probably watching have never made a knife, or maybe even handled a knife like this before, some of the parts that are need to be fabricated in a lockback knife, and also a little bit about how you made the leap from being a jeweler, making jewelry, into making knives, and what kind of was the catalyst for that?
Well, okay. If I forget part of what you asked me, remind me.
I will.
But I'll do how I got into it first.
Okay.
I actually made my first knife way back when I'd only been making jewelry maybe 3 years when I did it. I was, there was a book put out by Penland School of Crafts jewelry making, and you've seen the recent one, but this one was back in the 70s, and I haven't seen it in a really long time. But in there was this fantastic little slip joint folding knife, and Gary Knopke was the artist that made it, and he had a chased handle, gold, and all of it. He'd made the blade out of an old file, and all there were these very rudimentary drawings and photographs, black and white photographs of him putting this together. And I took that on as I just was enthralled with it, and I loved it. And I did this knife, and I got it to work. I annealed an old file. I filed the blade to shape by hand. I used a jeweler's saw to cut it out. It was a monumental task doing it the way I was doing it. I put a silver and gold handle on it. I was just so proud of that thing. It was horrible. Best thing ever. And it opened and closed, and it not real tight, not perfect by any means. But I didn't make another knife for 70 years. And until I met Jim, or I saw pictures of his knives, and I was just intrigued with the material of his blades, which is called Damascus steel or pattern welded steel. And what I make now is 324 layers of 2 different types of steel welded together in a forge from the hammer, and that's what I make before I ever start the knife. And when I saw his work, I was just intrigued with it. And I'd seen it in a magazine or a book or something somewhere. And I was in a craft fair at a local museum. This was in Schenectady, New York. And I was a jeweler, I'm strictly a jeweler. And they did a newspaper article on me as advertisement for the craft fair. And I had this little knife sitting out in the photograph too, in amongst my jewelry. And I was at this show, and this man and woman came up to me. They're dressed in like lumberjack shirt and stuff like that, and very quiet and just looking at my stuff. And he says, "Oh, I see you make knives." And I'm just so proud of this thing. And I pulled this on. I'm telling him the whole story, and I'm just as proud as I can be of this. And he just looked at it, and he handed it to his wife, and she looked at it. And he said, "Well, I make knives too. Would you like to see one?" And he pulled out one of these incredible folders out of his pocket. And I was just wanted to crawl under the table because it was great. And that's how I met him. And I ended up knowing him for a few years before I went up there with a friend who had wanted to learn about knife making. So I went up introduced him to Jim, and Jim was forging Damascus the next day, and he said, "Well, come on up if you two want to try it out." I was like, wow. It's just really cool. And he only lived 20 minutes away from me. So we went up there, and Jim had 2 billets prepared just for us to try, one for each of us. And this was in the winter, because he always did his forging in the middle of winter because it's very hot work. And my friend just could not get the hang of it. He did not enjoy himself or anything. I, on the other hand, loved it. And I was just completely taken with it. And I got it immediately. I understood it. I understood how to do it. And so I just kept going back on. But Jim said, "Come on up." And he just started teaching me how to do it. And I just wanted to I love locking mechanisms. I like mechanisms in that I always did in jewelry. I like coming up with catches and things like that. And to make something that locks, and I like a lock back is a specific type of folding knife, because it makes a noise when it opens and closes. It cracks closed and it snaps open, and it's just fun. So I got to play with Jim's knives and see these incredible things, and that there was such different design things that you could do with them. It's just, I wanted to do it. So I've been a jeweler for 17, 18 years before I started doing that. And I just knew I wanted to make knives as soon as I started doing it.
Wow.
So
that's very cool. And that, what did you say, 300 and some layers?
324. In the particular, and this is the pieces, I do a ladder, what's called a ladder pattern. And then you see it looks very ripply in the blade. That's, once I get those 324 layers all fused, which is basically what's happening, you're fusing them together with heat and pressure. I cut into them, and I cut lines across and on alternate sides, and then hammer that again flat, so you have different layers showing up through the top and where it cut away. And it once you grind it down, you get this wavy pattern to it. It's just, there's tons of different patterns you can make, but I particularly like the ladder pattern. I just like making, that's what I do.
It's very pretty. So what are some of the other parts that are in the knife?
Well, in a lockback knife, you have a spring that snaps the blade open and also holds it closed. And you have a lock bar or a back bar, and that's what the spring rides against. It's also got, it's the tip that sits into the blade, so it locks it open. And it works on a pivot, so you have to press the back of it down to lift the lock out of the blade. And then what I call a spring keeper that holds the spring in and allows it to have tension on the lock bar to either hold the blade open or closed. And the liners and handle is specific. The liners are the base of what's underneath your pretty materials on top. It's the basic part that's holding all the parts of the knife together. And I pin my knives together. I really don't like to use screws and all. This knife here happens to be screwed together, and I don't like it. All my knives are pinned together with 14 karat gold. And if I make screws, the screws are 14 karat gold too, and I make those.
Wow.
Which is why I don't like using screws. I also don't like that slot that you see in them. So I always grind off that slot when I'm done screwing that knife together. I grind the slot off so it looks like pins instead. So I make a lot of extra work for myself, but it's the aesthetics. I have to do that.
Right. And it's your voice. It's you're a perfectionist, and you have attention to detail. So every detail matters, and it communicates something about you, your soul, your energy, all of those things, and that's important. And that's a matter of pride, I think, and craftsmanship.
I agree, and it is extremely important to me. And I don't want you to look and say, "Oh, look, that thing's screwed together," because you see this mechanical part that you identify as a screw. To me, that just takes away from the overall design. It interrupts the flow of just seeing this as a visual design.
So what is one of your favorite techniques?
This one here is two of them on there. The forging Damascus is absolutely one of my all-time favorite things. I just absolutely love it. And the other one here is fusing. I've done a lot of different fusing techniques, and I just love to fuse. And I have a couple of them that you've seen here in some of these photos that you probably wouldn't even recognize, but they're I do a technique where I fuse 14 karat gold solidly all the way through sterling, and then etch it so that the gold is raised off the surface of the sterling. It's I don't know anybody else that does it. I've never seen it. I was inspired by a different puzzle technique that I saw somebody do decades ago with it, and I just had this idea one day of, I could do this. It's something that's very different, but it's a fusing technique. But between the Damascus and the fusing, those are my two things.
Is that fusing technique on one of these knives? On one of the pictures? Which one?
It's back further, back further. Keep going. That one.
This one?
That one.
Okay.
If you look at that oxidized sterling handle, that gold, and if you look at it from the top, if you look at the spine of it, you can see that gold is solid all the way through that silver.
Yes.
And it's a very tricky technique, of course, because gold melts at a higher temperature than silver.
Yes.
And to get that refinement of the line is, it's just, there's all this stuff that goes into it that I don't tell anybody about it. When I do it, I just say that's gold and silver. But to me, to be able to get that all defined as well as it is, just thrilled me.
Yeah. There's something really exhilarating about fusing. It's that having the torch in one hand. I use a German mouth torch, so it's controlling my breath, controlling the heat, watching the surface flow, stopping or pulling back at the right time, giving more heat when I need to, and sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for it all to go to hell.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you just don't know if it's going to work out or not. And when it does, you just want to run around the studios, doing a little Snoopy dance, and nobody understands why you're so excited.
No, it's an accomplishment when it comes out right, and it's tricky. I do the fusing that I'm doing there. I do with oxyacetylene. It has to be done hot and really fast, and it took me a long time to figure out how to make it repeatable without, and so that because if you melt that silver and gold together, you get electrum, which is not terribly attractive.
No. It's neither silver nor gold. It's something in between. Yep. And the etching is fun too. That last process.
I do it in nitric acid because I like it to go fast, and it's very crisp, and I like it. So that's what I was taught to use when I etch, and it's just something that I like the speed of it.
Yes. Do you do it galvanically or just with the chemical?
Yeah, just chemical.
Yeah.
Just distilled water and nitric solution.
Yeah. That's fun. Yeah.
Hang
Chemicals fun. I'm excited because my son is getting his biochemical engineering degree, so I'm like, oh, that'll come in handy. I can just call my chemist and ask him if I'm going to hurt myself.
Right.
Okay, so my next question for you is, what's on your bench now?
Well, this is a folder that I've got started, and what you can see there, everything's here but the spring. I don't have the spring ready yet, but I've got the blade, and then the lock bar is the piece on the top, and there's a pivot hole through that, and you can see, and that's going to rotate. You press on the rear end of it, that lifts the notch that goes into the blade. To release the blade from turning, and then the liners are those two parts in the middle that look like handle pieces, and all of the whatever I use as the handle parts, mother of pearl or whatever, will be pinned onto that. And then that shape in the back is the spring keeper, and it's not cut to shape yet because I don't know exactly what file work I'm going to do yet. Some file work takes more of an area of it to extend outside of the liners than others, so I do it oversized, and then as I get into the design, I'll finish it to the way I want it to be.
Well, that's smart. Then you don't have to do it twice.
Right.
So
I had twice in 3 times. Right.
Then maybe you can use those on another piece, right? If you get lucky.
Yeah, if I got lucky, but I just don't. I make the knives. They don't. All the pinholes don't line up.
Oh yeah. That makes sense now that you're saying that. Yeah.
Sometimes they do, and I've gotten better over the years about. I've gone to making patterns in Photoshop, and I make them extremely precise now, and it's really helped out a lot. And It's something that I've developed just in the last year and a half, and I get beautiful fine line in there, and I can rotate it in Photoshop. I can make it work. I can figure a lot of things out right there in the paper, and it really is helpful. And then after I do a paper pattern, I always make a steel pattern, then a knife from the steel pattern. So I can use the steel pattern again later for another knife, but if it's the first time I'm doing a knife, I essentially make 2 knives.
Wow. Yeah, I had asked you earlier before we started how many hours you have on average in every knife. Do you want to share that?
Sure. It's at least 80 hours.
Wow.
And a lot of them go well over 100.
Wow. Yeah. You can see it though. It's very evident. Okay, so is there something you do every day to prepare yourself for being creative and having a great day in the studio? And what does that perfect day in the studio look like?
I've done different things over my life. I've been through periods where I would meditate in the morning, and one of the things I love to do is go out for a walk at sunrise. I like to go out just as the daylight's starting, a little glimmer on the horizon. I don't do it every day. I would have to say the only routine I have is coffee.
Yeah, lots of coffee.
But I like the idea of doing that every day, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, it's far and few in between. We have good intentions.
Very.
Yes.
Very good intentions. The perfect day in the shop would start with a clean bench, which doesn't always happen, but
the pictures look very clean.
Thank you.
It looks beautiful. It's a to die for studio shop.
It definitely is, and it's the culmination of having so many other shops and studios throughout my career. And I had the little tiny studio in a closet or a dungeon in the cellar type of places, and my husband also is a knife maker, and he built this shop, and he's been making knives longer than I have, and we had each lived so many years separately with our own unique little shops or studios or whatever, that when we moved to this house, this is actually a 2-car garage, and Dan is brilliant. He designed all the electric, all the wiring, all the lighting, everything else, and the vacuum system is to die for. And I was the helper that helped him build it, but essentially built it just the 2 of us. And
wow.
It's got everything that we need. We don't forge it, obviously. This is the finishing shop, but it's just, I'm very grateful. I'm very lucky.
It's very nice. It looks way bigger than a 2-car garage, though.
It was just a cement block 2-car garage. It's
wow.
Just, yeah. I've got before and after pictures. If I remember, I'll put them up.
Oh, that would be very interesting. I'd like to see that. Because I've seen them through the years, but just these pictures, not the before pictures.
Oh, it's completely different. We took out the garage doors. It's just insulated walls now and everything. And it's very, very comfortable to work in.
Nice. Well, it needs to be. You go every day. It needs to be a place you love to be in, that feels good, has good energy.
Yep. And it definitely does.
That's nice. And so do you guys ever fight over tools? Who gets to use it? Get off that bandsaw.
No, we share very well. I don't like when my tools migrate over to his bench. But we basically both have our own tools, and then there's the big ones like the grinders and surface grinder and metal cutting bandsaw and drill presses and stuff like that. That we're usually doing different things that we can work around each other.
Nice.
And he has his own design style. He's known for different things than I am. And
nice.
Different collectors. We do very rare collaborations together, but they're only on really, really high-end pieces that require more effort than what we put into our regular knives. So.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to put on your business hat and ask you about how you manage your business tasks with making. So your, marketing, packaging, which is, by the way, if anyone hasn't seen her packaging, it's amazing. Just go to the thread on packaging. Your shipping, your sourcing, and with the making tasks, how do you balance it all? What was a tip that you could give someone else?
Well, your packaging, of course, is going to be your first impression when somebody gets what you receive, what you've made for them. So it's important to project whatever image you want that to be, and that's how I've always viewed that. As a jeweler, I had velvet boxes with my name inside and all of that, and it's an expense, but it's a worthwhile expense, and it's a marketing expense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I'm turning out 5 knives a week and I have to package and do all that every week,
right.
every day. So I don't, that's no big deal. But in terms of marketing, there used to be more knife shows, and that was primarily where you would go to be shown and seen and interact and do all the schmoozing type stuff. That's not the case anymore, and I see that also in the jewelry world and craft world too. So that's different now, and I don't have all the answers about that. Social media is essential, but you can spend too much time on social media, and it's a fine line, and it's tricky. And the problem I have with social media is it's all done visually. There's no touching. And like I said earlier, you can make something look really good in a photograph, but in person it is not. And so there's also I do see that people that get to be very popular on social media may not do the best work, but because they are skillful at getting their face out there and promoting themselves, they become internet famous.
Yes. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's a very new world right now. And so I'm on Instagram, and I don't post as much as I should, but I am on Instagram, and I think it's essential. I think that these are things you have to do. I think Facebook is okay. I think it's good to interact and learn and see and meet other people.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it can take up too much time.
Yeah, it's that fine line between community and addiction.
Yeah, exactly.
I might be having a problem with that. And after I watched The Social Dilemma, I'm realizing I need a 12-step program.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do.
Yeah. But what you said is true about seeing people's pieces. I have seen some very famous people's pieces in person, and I'm so disappointed. And then I've also seen some very famous pieces in person, and I'm blown away. And it is a lot of marketing, how good you are at getting out there and selling what you have, and having that come across in photography is really, really important.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your studio mates. They're a little furry.
That is Mojo. We have 2 cats, and there's Mojo and Odo. They have their own places in the shop. And
now, what's down below? That's not a cat? It looks like a brown cat.
Where?
Underneath the desk, but it's not, because I thought you had 3 cats, but you only have 2.
No, I'm not trying to see. Oh, I think that's a picture that Van there. That's Van over there. I'm on over here on the right side. So.
It's nice to have studio mates that don't talk sometimes.
Yeah, they can be very demanding. Mojo lays usually on where Odo's in that picture on that bed, and he'll reach over and touch the treats and say, "It's time, please now." Slave.
Who belongs to whom, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, they look very happy though.
Yeah, they're great kids.
Okay, so for one of my last questions for you, it's a fun one. It's just silly. So if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
A billboard with anything on it. I don't know. That's such a. The only thing that pops into my mind is just black background, one of my knives, and my name, and that's it.
Love it. Love it. It doesn't have to be pithy or anything. It can just be about the art. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to do David Letterman's top 10. And of course, you're a rule breaker. So I grouped some of your extras into the top number 10. So let's start with number 10. Because I always find this interesting when we have talked about someone's work and looked at their work. I'm always like, what tools do they have? What do they use? How are they executing this? And so your number 10 is 4 pieces, which is your old German jeweler's saw, which looks like it has some miles on it.
It does. They last forever and they're cheap.
A custom made by your mentor. Is this made by your knife maker mentor or your teacher?
Yep.
Knife maker.
Yes.
Antler handled scribe and handmade scribe in your brass pin vise. And that's beautiful. I love that. I bet it feels so good in your hand too.
It's a wonderful, wonderful scribe. He made the tip of it is an old round needle file.
Oh, nice.
Stuck into the antler, and it's just a great thing. I like a finer tip, so I made the one with the brass pin vise. And it's just a 20 gauge drill bit that I grind the tip down very fine, and it's really good scribe, but the other one, it has the magic.
Yeah, it does. You can tell just by looking at it. One of my mentors, Pat Flynn, made me one, not a scribe, but a soldering pick, and it has a bamboo handle on it that he carved, and he made the soldering. It's just perfect. It feels so good in your hand, and it's one of my favorites, and I just love it. So these are the gifts that you get that are so meaningful, and the thing that when somebody comes in your studio, you look for it afterwards to make sure it's still there and didn't walk away, or you had a class and you lost it or left it. And then your last one for this number 10 is there's 2 more. This is a large heart burr and a pin vise for removing the flashing or the burr on a hole. Very smart. I do that too with tubing.
Such a handy tool.
It is. And I like that pin vise a lot with the flat end on the end. Well, I haven't seen that.
Flat end is a berry. So that it turns. When you've got the palm of your hand, it just turns really nice and easy.
Yeah. Very nice. And then the last one is your calipers. Tonya, is that how you say that? Yes. Yeah, having a good pair of calipers is everything.
Yeah. Because I work with such tight tolerances to make a good working knife, a folding knife everything has to be absolutely precise, and I have to have a good caliper to make what I make.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, those are great. Your number 9 favorite tool is this, which I don't really know what it's for. Is this for a mill?
No, you could use it in a mill, but it's a file guide, and I do use this for filing. Because I need like where the lock, to make the lock, I have to have absolutely parallel flat surfaces. This file guide here is just extremely precise, and the faces on the top surface are carbide, so they're not going to get filed down. I don't have to surface grind them to back into patent shape and all of that. It's a wonderful tool, and I couldn't make a knife without it.
It's like a knife maker's version of a miter jig that we use in making tool. So we can file on it and file flat, and it doesn't ruin the tool itself.
Right.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah, it's just imperative.
Your number 8 is an old prototype Orion micropulse welder, like a puck welder, right?
Yeah.
Pulse arc? Yes.
Yeah.
So how long have you had that?
We got this, I think, in probably 2004, maybe.
I love that it's red.
They painted it just for us. That
Oh,
color.
nice.
Yeah, this is a prototype. They hadn't even started them out on the market yet.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and we got it, and we got to test it and work with it, and it's still going strong. It's great. It doesn't have the lovely little computer screen, all of that stuff. It's just very basic, but it works great.
Well, you don't need that. You know how to use it to its fullest capacity. So that's all the stuff that you get when you don't know how to use tools and you have to figure it out. It makes it easier.
Yeah. And you can do stuff with this tool that you can't do with a torch, you know, and as you know, this type of a tool is for certain things, there's nothing else to use.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe laser welder. I don't know. I've never used a laser welder, but it's great to have that as an option.
Yeah. Well, and these are not quite as expensive.
Right.
Yeah. So this is like a middle of the road.
Right. Yeah.
Your number 7 is your precision drill press. And do you have a favorite brand?
There was that one there. That's actually a milling machine. The only thing I don't know how to use a milling machine. The only thing I know how to do is use the drill press on it. I don't know what brand that is. There's a mini drill press that
Micromark. I have it. Yes. I have the mill.
Yep. Well, they have a miniature drill press that's very good. I have one of those too, but it didn't photograph as well as this one. But the most important part about this is the chuck, because you can get an average drill press, and if you put a precision chuck like what's on here, it will make it much more precise.
Right.
And I always recommend, spend your money on your chuck.
Yes.
This chuck here is probably $250 just for the chuck.
Yeah.
But it's worth every penny, because you will. It just operates easier. It's key with the chuck, and it's much more efficient. And you will just get a precision hole that you can't get another way.
Right, without the wobble. No wobbles.
None.
Yep. And if anybody wants to buy a mill, ask me first. I will tell you all the pros and cons of getting that Micromark one. There's a whole story behind that. So, but yeah, it is essential to have good tools and to know how to get the most out of a tool like this, like by having the right, arbor that goes in there or whatever. Yeah. Okay, your number 6, drum roll, is the Wilton Mini Swivel Vise. Can you still get those? That brand?
I think I saw them. Hold on. Dan, can you still? No, he says no. You can't still get it. No, this is an old one. I bought this one from my mentor's estate, and it's very old, and I just love it. It is solid as a rock. It swivels to all sorts of different positions, locks in place, and it's just parallel jawed, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful vise.
Yeah, they don't make some tools like they used to. They're hard to find, and you can get some things like that. Like I got an old fence post vise from Yuma, Arizona on eBay, and it didn't have any rust because it came from the desert, the god awful desert. And it's just one of those things that they don't make anymore. You can't even get something like that. You have to find it, and you have to shop hard, long days trying to find them, or inherit them, which is nice too.
Right.
Okay, your number 5 is your Outlaw 2 horizontal and vertical variable speed grinder, which I know those cost a pretty penny, and they are loved.
Oh, this is a wonderful grinder. This is like a Cadillac of grinders. It's at this right now. It's in the horizontal position. It also flips up, and you can use it vertically too. It's just fantastic grinder. It tracks perfectly. It's solid square construction. It's just excellent. I had my original grinder that I bought back in 1984, I think it was a Vader 2, which is a very good grinder, but it did not have variable speed. It had 2 speeds. It had or off and hill, and that was it. And it's scary to use.
Yeah. Well, especially when you have a knife in your hand.
Oh yeah. And variable speed is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Your number 4 is the vertical variable speed disc sander. Is this the same brand?
No, this
Different
is
brand?
yeah. This one I bought from True Grit. Van put the variable speed on it a couple years when we moved into the shop. It was just on and off before, and again, variable speed is wonderful. But that table will tilt, so I can do 45-degree grinds or
Wow.
90-degree grinds or anything in between. You know, it's and you can see the vacuum setup.
I was going to say that. That's really so important. I never took it really that seriously in my 30s and 40s. And then I realized I really want to live longer than I would if I hadn't had good health ventilation systems and dust collection systems, especially since I work with mild steel, and steel is really not something you should be breathing in fine particles. So it's really great to see such a nifty thing, and I wish they were more commercially available, that you could put something together like this, because obviously you guys have the engineering mind to do it, but a lot of us don't.
Right. I wouldn't have been able to put this together. My brain doesn't work this way. But Van did this, and he was a Harbor Freight part that was on sale, their vacuum system that was on sale, and he would walk through the hardware store or Walmart's garden center and say, oh, I could use this for this or this for that, and put all these things together, and it is wonderful. It's plumbed to every tool in the shop.
Wow.
It needs one.
That's really great.
You'll see the metal cutting bandsaw in a minute. That's out in a separate room. It's plumbed to that.
Yeah.
It's plumbed to the drill presses. You know, it's fantastic.
It's really important. The one thing I tell younger people is invest now. It's really expensive, and you think, oh, that's $1,000 I could spend somewhere else, but you'll spend a lot more in healthcare trying to fix issues that you could have prevented with good safety measures in your studio.
Well, Van put the whole vacuum system, like I said, it's plumbed to everything in here. It all has gates, so every machine can be shut off. That's not.
Oh, nice.
You need the vacuum to it. He did that. It was just under $800.
Wow, that's a steal. He should
It's
sell
because-
PDFs on how to do that. Like, just sell a little tutorial on how to put together your own thing. And they would buy it.
Yeah. Oh, he's very brilliant at that sort of thing.
Don't you love that? I love being with somebody who's brilliant.
Yep. I'm very fortunate.
Your number 3 is the horizontal variable speed disc sander. So you have a lot of sanders around.
I have to have flat surfaces.
Yep.
And sometimes I have to have them at 90 degrees where I have to have a horizontal disc sander, and sometimes I have to flatten like the inside of the liners of the knife. Anything that's going to have anything move against it, because I don't use any washers or bushings in my knives. They have to be absolutely smooth on the inside. Yeah. And that's what this does.
And very precise tolerances.
Very.
Yeah.
Very. And all of these two disc sanders, the discs are set up so that we have multiple discs. They're magnetic, and they just slap onto the backing, and we have multiple ones with different grits of sandpaper on them, so it's very efficient. You can go through all the grits of sandpaper without having to peel one off and put it on, because we have extras.
Efficiency is everything, and it's when labor is your biggest cost. The more you can cut down with the proper tools, the more money you can make.
Right.
Very smart. Very smart. Okay, your number 2, we're almost there, is the antique Sanford surface grinder. How old is that thing?
This is probably 40s, maybe.
Wow.
And I was really fortunate to get this. Another knife maker that was also my mentor's student had found this. He didn't need it, but he used to have the old tool or wanted catalogs that you could get in the grocery store, and he found it somewhere, and he refurbished it.
Wow.
And he didn't want it, and he sold it to me, and that magnetic chuck on there is only like 3 by 5 inches. It's perfect for a folder blade. And I had a very tiny little bedroom shop in my log cabin that I lived in, and this was about the only surface grinder I could have fit in there.
Right.
And it's just perfect. It's ancient, but it runs great.
That's nice.
What a prized tools.
Love that. I love old tools. So great. And your number one is something I have seen in your pictures before, and it is amazing. Makes my little bandsaw look like a toy. It is your metal cutting bandsaw.
This is just a great tool, and this is one of Dan's. We both say we came with good tools when we got together, because we both had complete shops and had been doing stuff for many years before we met. And this is one tool that Van had, and this thing is fantastic. And we make our own bandsaw blades, and by that I mean we buy long lengths of bandsaw blade and weld them to fit this machine. And again, this is plumbed with a vacuum system to it, and it's just a great tool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You put the blades together on the left-hand side of it. There's a welder right on it, so that you can weld blades together.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That is cool. So you laugh when I post my little bandsaw, my little micro mark bandsaw. You're probably like, that's not a saw.
Yeah, right. But the other thing I want to point out too is that you can see at every station there's light.
Yeah.
There's a lot of light. And that's really important.
Especially when you're working with such precision and tolerances, you have to be able to see. Are you at the point where are you wearing an optivisor and
oh yeah,
you have a microscope?
I wear readers, and I use a microscope when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all at that age now.
Yeah, it happens to everybody.
They can fix all these other things. Why can't they just give us new eyeballs? I don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
It's disappointing. I finally got to that stage though where I'm like accepting of my readers. I'm not like getting pissed off that I have to have them and where are they and I have to put them on to read anything. But yes.
Great. It works so good.
Yeah, having light is good. In your studio is beautiful. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you for sharing your massive amount of talent and techniques. And I understand knives so much more than just looking at them, which is great because it makes them so much more interesting, and the work is incredible. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for asking me. I really appreciate it, and this has really been fun. Good.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much. And thank you so much for always having really helpful things to say on every group that you're on, helping people. You may not know how much you help people, but just your little tips and techniques are so wonderful and appreciative. I really appreciate them.
Thank you. I've got so many years and so much information now that it's nice to be able to share it.
I love it. And a lot of people don't share for whatever reason. And I think it's sad because we all have so much to give, and we can spark that in someone else. And that little spark, you never know what's going to happen with that, where it leads that other person, that chain of energy. I love it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We're all done. It wasn't so bad. Well, you have a great night. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, Tonya. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.